talking about a country divided and a nation divided. We've always been a nation divided. That's why we got two political parties. And in recent times, most of the elections are real close, whether it's electoral college or the popular vote. Well, we don't live in a country that all of us see the world a certain way. And I think a lot of the impossibilities of government are because we're so dadgum diverse. I mean, we're a bunch of people in a big old country from a lot of different places and a lot of different perspectives. And I believe that federalism has always been the ace in the hole that we need to play when we realize these issues that arise. Federalism gives you a chance, Rev, to do what? To live in a place that kind of has an agreeing philosophy of government. In other words, if you don't like the way California governs itself, you leave. You move to Texas. You move to South Carolina. If you don't like the way South Carolina governs itself, you have the luxury of picking up and moving to a state. Illinois would be a good example that governs itself in a very different sort of way. But I believe that we're not only in disagreement, we're beginning to really dislike one another. And I think that's dangerous. And Bill Maher, you've heard me talk about Bill Maher before. I don't know if any of you have heard the most recent commentary Maher offered. And Maher's no fool. I mean, he's plenty smart. And he's informed. And he's, I think he's wrong. But he represents some of that resentment that certain elite enclaves have with the regular folk. So we've passed the point of having political disagreements and squabbles and, we can't get anything done in Washington because nobody can agree to compromise on anything. No, we're much past that. We're to the point now we don't really like one another anymore. It gets ugly quicker than it has customarily. And people blame the media and television because it's in your face 24/7. And I guess to some degree it stokes the flames. But Bill Maher is on a show, the HBO show. He's got Real Time. And I read a couple of comments he made. And, Maher's a provocateur, and Maher's a person trying to get ratings, and he's on HBO, and he knows his audience is a little more elitist than it would be if he were on a radio station in Florence, South Carolina. So he markets his message to those sorts of people. But it's pretty obvious to me that Bill Maher represents what I'll call an intentional contempt for the blue state voter. The red state voter. They just don't like you. It's almost like it's become, and a lot of the political debate in America today has become the white progressive against the white working class. I was trying to find a couple of exact comments that Maher made a week and a half or so ago when he was talking about, income inequality and this spatial geographic inequality that we have. And he basically mocked, red state America. And I think I think Maher speaks for a lot of the elites, a lot of the political establishment, when he says that, that there are just a few smart, rich people in the country, and they all live in the eastern enclaves of New York, Manhattan and Boston, and, and I guess to some degree New England would be a part of that northeastern corridor that is home to, the smart people who need to be in charge of running the country. And then you've got the West Coast, the San Franciscos, the Los Angeleses, the San Diegos of the world. If we'd only let those people, run the country, we'd all be better off. But then he basically began kind of mocking, red state America. Here's a quote: "Maybe that has something to do with why Trump voters are obsessed with owning the libs, because the libs own everything else." He bragged that he and his blue state friends were having a prosperity party while the rest of the nation wears cheap clothing and eats inexpensive food. Mississippi is so poor, Maher said, that liberals should buy it and recolonize it as their state. He said that in Wyoming, people dress in non-designer clothes, opting instead for Target. He said red state residents don't eat well either. We have Chef Wolfgang Puck. They have Chef Boyardee. I mean, and then Maher's provocative. I mean, I don't think he means everything he says, but I think he's representative of this disdain that the country's beginning to have one for another. Now, we're living in a very in an age of political discontent. But we've lived in a lot of eras and ages of political discontent. I just don't believe there's been the personal animosity and the personal disdain and dislike.
Well, I can remember his comments shortly after the election. Wasn't he the one that said he prayed for recession to make sure that...
Sure. Well, I mean, he's actually gone on the air and said he wishes somebody would shoot Trump. I mean, a couple of others have said that. But Maher, I mean, you got to put Maher in a box. I mean, he is what he is. He's a show host for an HBO show that allows him to be far more provocative than he could be. But Rev, I still think some of the things he says he means. And it goes back to what I believe is some of the dysfunction of our country. And I think the fairest question to ask is, have we become impossible to govern? Are we an ungovernable nation? And I think the answer is yes. And I'm getting way ahead of myself here. I mean, I understand we pass policies. Give me an example of legislation that was bipartisan and was in the best interest of the American people. Give me the last example or the latest example of a piece of legislation that is now law of the land as a result of the co-equal branches of government working through the process as our founders intended, and it was genuinely good for the American people.
And the only thing I can think of that there was some bipartisan agreement lately was that criminal justice reform bill.
Okay, you're right.
And, of course, the I guess you have to judge whether that was good or not, but I think most people on both sides may agree.
But it happened in the traditional sense of American politics.
And it's very rare.
It happened as a representative republic hashes out its issues. There was there's a debate, there's subcommittees, there's full committees, there's a debate on the floor. We believe that there are too many people in prison who shouldn't be in prison. Our legislative leaders got together. They figured out some sort of compromising deal. The president signs it into order. You're right. That is the way government is intended to work. That's the way our representative republic is supposed to function. But Obamacare, what was Obamacare? It was a liberal pipe dream. And it was crammed down the throats of, a lot of people who didn't approve of it. I mean, the approval ratings for Obama when it was passed was about 32%. So 2/3 of the country didn't approve of it, yet our legislative leaders did what? They made it law of the land because that's what they wanted. Okay, let's take the tax cuts. Well, we all agreed the tax cuts were good for the economy. Who benefited the most from the tax cuts? Corporations. I mean, the centerpiece of the Trump tax cut was the corporate tax reduction from 35 to 21%. That didn't put any more money in your pocket. I'm not saying you didn't get a little more. I'm not saying the tax cuts were bad, but we're governing in a way now that is not in the best interest of the American public. And I think you can do that for a little while, but sooner or later the public catch on, and sooner or later they realize, wow, man, you guys aren't representing the interest of the constituency. You're not looking after me. You're not doing a job with me in mind and my livelihood in mind and my job in mind and my educating my kids in mind and my trying to get to work in mind. And I just think we've so disconnected Washington from the real world. But I think in fairness to Washington, it goes back to what I said a second ago, has the job of president become impossible to do? And I think there's a legitimate argument to make that, yes, it has, because we're a nation of 325 million different kinds of people. And the problem is not the job, it's what we're asking the job to be. We're asking the job basically to be king of the universe. And that goes back to my belief in the Federalist. I mean, the way, and I know that, my guy, Jefferson, was not as staunch a supporter of federalism. Jefferson believed that, we needed to have a strong executive, and that executive needed to be obviously the president. But I think there will be a day when a certain segment of our population say, I'm not going to be governed like that anymore. Trump was an example of that, Rev. I mean, people didn't vote for Donald Trump because they thought he was the most capable of running the country. People didn't vote for Donald Trump because they thought he was the most virtuous man in town and he would restore integrity to the White House. People didn't vote for Trump because they thought he would all of a sudden create, some sense of unity in our country. No, people voted for Trump because they felt that everything else they had tried didn't work. And that's why we got Donald Trump. And I don't understand, and I still don't understand how the people that we're so adversely affected by Trump becoming president. And I'm talking about the lobbyists, the consultants, the elites, the political class. They're the ones with the most to lose, and they're the ones that have failed to be introspective. I've got friends of mine who are elite. And when you talk about Trump, it's almost like, well, I mean, that was just one stupid thing. America does stupid things every now and then. That was that stupid thing we did. We'll come back to our senses, and order will be restored, and we'll get back to governing the country. No, we're not. No, we're not. There will be no restoring of order. We are in a political reset. We're in an absolute and total political reset. Where we go from here, I have no idea. I have no idea in this world where we go from here. But I can tell you this, if the Democrats didn't believe it, they would be running more moderate, centrist sorts of campaigns. What are the Democrats doing? They're throwing bones to the activist. They're talking in the most unimaginable ways about what they will do if they become president. Why? Because they understand we're dealing with a different audience. We're dealing with a different sphere. We're dealing with a different political orbit. And you better accept it. You better operate in it. And I just don't think it's sustainable. And I don't think we revert back to the status quo, because the status quo has failed us. Let me say that again. The status quo failed you. You allowed them to fail you longer than they deserved to fail you. But when you had a choice to do something incredibly unique and different, you did it. And I think Trump is so reflective of not just kind of a changing of the guard, but the discontent that I believe is so real and intense. And I think it's enduring. I mean, once again, I am most interested in where we go from here.